I'm going to do a second introduction to my friends here on the Residents Council, Ms. Shayna Williams and Ms. Aquila Habersham. And I think many of you know their story, know what they're about, but I'll do a brief reintroduction for those that maybe don't. These two women are part of the Yamacraw Resident Council, a group of 7 women who in September of 2024 were elected to represent the interests of the public housing community of Yamacraw Village, and they were certified by the Housing Authority as an official residence council pursuant to HUD regulations in December of 2024. It's only been a short time that they've been together, but they have accomplished so much. They've fundamentally changed the fabric of the housing community in Yamacraw Village, as well as changed, as you're going to hear from them, some of the plans for the redevelopment of Yamacraw Village.
All right, so in the past, 2 years, we have hosted community events attended by hundreds of Yamacraw residents, including the Easter egg hunt, back to school event, Oktoberfest, and Valentine's Day event. These events allow residents to meet each other and have fun while also connecting residents with outside resources thanks to the inclusion of organizations like the City of Savannah Code Compliance, the Deep Center, Harambee House, and many more.
And this is how we changed the Housing Authority demolition plan by getting HAS to Housing Authority to provide additional relocation benefits beyond what is required by HUD for Section 18. And that means like covering application fees for families, applying to homes, paying for security deposits for residents, renting new homes.
I'm the president of the council. My name is Alexis Lampkin, for everybody that's here. Okay, so now we have to ensure that residents will not be charged for damages to their Yamacraw units when moving out unless trash is left in the unit. Ensure residents who are transferring to public housing have 5 days to decide on whether they want to accept a unit. Committing to redevelop 100 income-based units in Yamacraw. That means like after they rebuild Yamacraw, they will put 100 income-based units inside. We are hoping to be able to come back, well, for those who want to come back. Granting Yamacraw residents who lived in Yamacraw on August 19, 2025, a first right to return to Yamacraw Village. Providing a secondary right to return for all residents who left Yamacraw between January 1st, 2023 and August 18, 2025. Provide a right to return for residents who leave Chatham County to rent a home with their voucher, with their Section 8 voucher. Clarify that if a family receives a fine or lease violation, it won't lead them to losing their right to return to Yamacraw. Okay? Allow all residents to request an informal hearing. Allow all residents to request an informal hearing over email if they have issues with their relocation benefits. The work is still not done because we want the Housing Authority to provide us with legally enforceable agreements which will ensure that they follow through on their promises to us.
I just want to again underscore what these ladies just listed off, right? These are changes to the Housing Authority's redevelopment and relocation plan that they have won for their community based on their advocacy, based on showing up for one another, based on showing up for their neighbors, and based on a lot of hard work, coming to monthly board meetings, getting involved with the very complicated policies of the Housing Authority, of the HUD programs, right? So they have gotten these changes, right, to the Housing Authority's relocation plan. But as Ms. Lampkin alluded to, the job is not done. Why is the job not done? Because these promises, right, have either been made in writings, emails, or made orally, or made in the relocation plan, but these are not promises that are legally enforceable, which means they're promises until the Housing Authority decides they're not promises anymore. And a promise that isn't legally enforceable is not a promise you can take to the bank. There are 90 families that live in Yamacraw Village. Their future, their children's future, depend on these promises coming to fruition. And the council has repeatedly demanded that the Housing Authority take its relocation plan, make it into a contract that's legally enforceable so that if they decide not to, as Ms. Habersham mentioned, give security deposit assistance, or if they decide not to, as Ms. Lampkin mentioned, allow a right to return, then there is repercussions. There's a court case that can come out of it that will allow residents to be able to enforce the promises that the Housing Authority has made to them. And for the last 4 months, the Residents Council and their attorneys have engaged in negotiations with the Housing Authority, sit-down meetings. The Residents Council is represented by 3 law firms: Georgia Legal Services, the National Housing Law Project, and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law. The Housing Authority has hired their own counsel. This month, the Housing Authority backed out of those negotiations to make these 2 agreements enforceable. And the Residents Council stands willing to come back to the table to finish the job, to have the promises the Housing Authority, to its credit, has made to make sure that they are in writing and enforceable. And so that's the work that still needs to be done. And it's on this community here and those of you who have friends here that aren't here to come and make sure the job gets done. It's been an honor to work with the council. I'm going to now transition to an additional remark that I'm going to make. So that's the job of the council, right? The council has work to do. We want these agreements for the council to be enforceable so that Yamacraw residents who are exiting Yamacraw can feel certain that they're going to get the benefits they need to find housing. And what's more, we want to make sure that there's commitment that the Housing Authority will rebuild at least 100 units of deeply affordable housing back in Yamacraw. I'm going to make a couple of additional remarks, and I'm going to make these not in my capacity as a legal representative for the YRC or as an employee of Georgia Legal. These are comments from me, David Sunshine Hamburger, as your neighbor. The Housing Authority is one of the most important public entities in our city. Through its public housing, project-based, and tenant-based voucher programs, the Housing Authority funds subsidized housing to nearly 6,000 households in Chatham County. This means that 1 out of every 10 renting households in our county is directly or indirectly subsidized by the Housing Authority of Savannah. The Housing Authority is the most important provider of affordable housing in our community, and it is failing those that rely on it and our community at large. These shortcomings have many forms. The Housing Authority rightfully complains about the lack of funding from HUD, but then elected to spend $30,000 a month paying for metal security screens to board up Yamacraw Village from May 2023 until last fall, when they all of a sudden realized plywood would do the trick. At a time when money is tight, the Housing Authority lit on fire hundreds of thousands of dollars to board up empty units, which could have been used to make repairs to units, hire staff, and help more renters. The Housing Authority, which now asks residents and this community to trust it with redeveloping Yamacraw Village, has a track record of redevelopment that should invite skepticism, not obedience. The Housing Authority selected the demolition strategies and hired the developers who turned the public housing communities of Fellwood Homes, Blackshear Homes, Fred Wessel Homes into sustainable Fellwood, River Point 1 and 2. Many of the residents were displaced, never returned, and many residents who live there now struggle daily with unsafe living conditions that help keep their families in poverty. These were demolition applications and development partners the Housing Authority selected. In 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice sued the Housing Authority over disability discrimination that violated the Fair Housing Act. HAS agreed to a consent order that lasts until February 2027 that requires it to retrain its staff and regularly file reports with the DOJ. The filing of the DOJ complaint came only months after the Housing Authority entered a similar conciliation agreement with the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity for other alleged disability discrimination that violate the Georgia Fair Housing Act. How many more of these agreements exist? How many more disabled tenants have suffered injustice due to poor staff training and in-house procedures? In my years representing Housing Authority tenants, I have routinely caught the Housing Authority violating other federal law by systematically not providing proper 30-day notices to tenants for non-payment of rent, failing to provide tenants notice of their vital protections under the Violence Against Women Act, and miscalculating monthly rents. But what I find most unacceptable is the punitive treatment the Housing Authority has to residents on a daily basis. For the residents here today, how many of you received a $75 fine for trash being outside your apartment or a $70 fine for broken blinds? How many? These are not fines that are required by HUD. Instead, these are policies that HAS and its board of directors have elected to impose. The Housing Authority routinely refuses to use its discretion to keep families housed. Altercations between residents that do not even result in arrests routinely lead to evictions instead of attempting reconciliation. Keeping an unregistered pet is grounds to send a family into the shelter system. The Housing Authority has been allowed to conduct itself in the manner I have been describing because its Board of Commissioners is either unqualified or unwilling to supervise it. Each of the Board of Commissioners was appointed at the sole discretion of the mayor, who I will address next. The mayor is not a bystander when it comes to a Housing Authority demolition application. His sign-off was required for the Housing Authority to submit its application to HUD last August, and it was his administration that was responsible for submitting the application's environmental review. The YRC came to Mayor Johnson in September to ask for his support for their community's concerns and suggestions for the relocation of residents and the redevelopment of Yamacraw. The mayor seemed sympathetic at first and told the Housing Authority to engage more deeply with the Yamacraw Resident Council's ideas. Then in late September, when the Housing Authority provided a relocation plan that did little to engage with the Resident Council's requests, Mayor Johnson wrote the Housing Authority, stating that, and I quote, "I do not believe the proposed relocation plan you submitted adequately addresses the clear and specific answers the council was seeking. I believe the Housing Authority of Savannah has the capacity to respond favorably to some of their concerns and codify the actions in writing." He stated he was so concerned that he might pause his letter of support for the demolition to HUD. 3 weeks later, after negotiations had not progressed, attorneys from the National Housing Law Project, Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights under the Law, and Georgia Legal Services wrote HUD and copied the mayor, stating that the Housing Authority's demolition plan violated the Fair Housing Act, a law passed during the civil rights movement to stop housing discrimination. The letter supplied data that showed that Yamacraw families who moved from their community with a voucher would likely end up moving to high poverty, highly segregated communities far from jobs, transportation, and their children's existing schools. The effect of the demolition without changes to the application would perpetuate segregation and harm Yamacraw families, nearly all of whom are black. The letter also provided an analysis by the Community Group, a leading consultant for public housing redevelopments, that calculated the Housing Authority and by association, our community, was leaving $40 million on the table in HUD money over the next 20 years by proceeding under the wrong application. After receiving these letters, Mayor Johnson did not contact the YRC or its council to inquire more about the allegations, but instead swiftly wrote to HUD to state his support for the Housing Authority. In his letter, Mayor Johnson stated that, and I quote, "As the former alderman who proudly represented the Yamacraw housing development, I've been deeply and personally involved with this community for many years. But Mayor Johnson's legacy with respect to Yamacraw is the alderman who represented the Yamacraw community as conditions deteriorated and as apartments emptied out. He oversaw the breakdown of Yamacraw, and now as mayor, he is overseeing and approving of its complete eradication. All this is happening at a time when the city he has been an elected leader in for over 2 decades is facing an affordability crisis, especially when it comes to housing. A 2024 study ranks Savannah the 9th least affordable city in America for renters. A 2025 study put us at the 20th least affordable city. There are more renters in Savannah than homeowners, and the median rent in Savannah's metro area has risen by 55% since the mayor took over in 2020. The Housing Savannah Task Force, commissioned by the mayor, found that 40% of Savannah households with incomes less than $50,000 annually cannot find affordable housing. What do these numbers translate to? Our shelters are at capacity. We now have school buses making routine stops at extended stay hotels where struggling Savannah families have sought refuge. Families that have called Savannah home for generations are leaving. In the historic downtown of Savannah, which the mayor represented on council for 15 years, the average mean income has increased by 102%, while the percentage of black residents has decreased by over 20%. I hope this video makes it to Facebook so I can be sure the mayor sees it, because I have 2 questions for him. Where do you stand, Van? Do you stand with the residents of Yamacraw Village in their fight to ensure that they get the guarantees they need to ensure their families are able to relocate safely and one day return to deeply affordable housing in Yamacraw? Do you agree with $75 fines for broken blinds? Do you agree with spending $30,000 a month on boarding up homes while those who occupy the units next door suffer with conditions issues? Are you concerned by the repeated settlement agreements for disability discrimination by the Housing Authority? Do you believe your handpicked Board of Commissioners are doing their jobs? What is the plan, Van? How are you going to get Savannah out of its affordable housing crisis? A crisis that has only gotten worse since you were made mayor and since you were elected in 2004. How will you ensure Yamacraw, a community that's existed as a historic, affordable community and a historic black community for over 250 years, continues its legacy for 250 more? This city and this community deserves to know the answer.
As you all know, there have been very, very successful people that came out of Yamacraw. Okay, now it was one point in time where I was paying $1,500 a month in rent to stay over there, and that's not fair, because we are on a set. I only go to work $18.50 at Gulfstream. That's not a bad job, and then I have my own business serving the seniors. You know, yeah, and then we have children, so it's not like we're poor. And broken down people. No, we are normal people who are building careers for ourselves, sending our children to college and everything, but we can't do that when we have the people that we are relying on, you know, as far as HUD, to be there to help us. It's like they making it harder on us. Now they have people cleaning up the community when they finna demolish it. If y'all finna tear something down, why y'all done hired people to clean up the community? We was keeping our community clean before y'all hired those people, but y'all gonna invest inside of the apartments where we living in. But sometimes I take my own money that I work for to fix up inside of my apartment. That's not something that I should be doing, just so my children can have somewhere decent. Now you say, okay, well, why don't you move? Because you have to have down payment. You have to have at least $10,000, $11,000 to move. They want first, last, in security to move. Now, we don't have that. So we stay where we are because it's not like we living under the bridge. It is a blessing from God, because if we don't work, they kept the rent down a lot. But if we don't work, how are we going to support our children? Who going to buy food for them? Who going to buy their school clothes? So we have to work. But when we do, they take more than 50% of your check. So you could barely survive off of that. You got a car note, you got car insurance. My car insurance was $633. I'm just getting into numbers so that you guys can understand where we coming from. It's not like we just speaking book smart stuff here. This is real people, real lives, real children. You know, we have a whole community center over here that we don't utilize. You go to other people's communities and they're utilizing their community center. I have people that have graduated with their PhDs who want to come and give our children tutoring and therapy sessions for the family and stuff, and we can't even use it. I have to take the children all the way to Bloomingdale in my own van, in my own truck, and now I just purchased the whole bus for that. And take them to church for outreach programs on Wednesdays from 5 to 8, when we could have all of that stuff right here. We don't want to tear down Yamacraw, but since we feel like we've been forced into it, we want to be able to get this stuff on writing. We want to be able to say, okay, when they rebuild, I have a company that serves senior citizens, retired vets, cancer patients. I partner with a company in Pooler over hospice centers. We have people that has restaurants. We have people that have daycares. They do their daycaring in their houses and stuff. We have people that went to college and finished college but can't find affordable living, and they in here thinking they're gonna get help, but they not. They not. You know, so when they rebuild this stuff, I want the opportunity to come back. I want to live in something nice. I worked for it. I suffered through it. And it's not like I'm suffering through it because it is a blessing from God. Like I said, it's like we got a safety net. You know what I'm saying? Whoever comes and live in there, they got a safety net, because if you don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. If you don't have a job and you can't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. That's the blessing of this, the blessing part. But right is right and wrong is wrong. Don't do something for somebody to say, oh, I did this, when you really didn't mean it. Because if you did, the fruit will show. The fruit is not showing the things that they are speaking to us. The fruit is not showing that. We signed a paper that's saying that they told us about these promises that they given us, but they haven't let us sign anything that says, okay, they're going to help us with security deposits. They haven't gave no agreement. They haven't gave any of that. We haven't signed nothing in black and white that says we're going to have somebody to help us move all our furniture out. Help us move, okay, I don't know if this seems like it's asking for too much, but if you finna tear down the house that we do have, it's not asking for too much. If you finna take down a whole building that been here for decades and generations before us, and this is what we relying on, then yes, we should have some type of helping hand to help move us to the next chapter in our lives. We should have some type of help to help us be able to move into another place, not just the vouchers that's going to expire in 90 days. It's hard to find a place, especially one that will receive Section 8. So you want us to get out at 90 days. I'm putting it in my speech, my words, from me, from a residence. Okay, you giving us 90 days to move out with a voucher. That's so much. Okay, and then what if I don't find nowhere? That means me and my 3 little girls, my daughter just went to Atlanta for marine biologists. We not know nothing people. We are somebody, people with degrees and with children with dreams that they trying to prosper. You know, it's time for prom and graduation. How are we going to pull this off if it ain't from God? Jesus Christ above. That's what I'm depending on. So we need something in writing that says, oh, we can come back. Y'all is going to put 100 affordable units out in the nice new development. And that if the ones that do want to move into their own homes, because with Section 8, you could get a rent-to-own home. They also have the NACA program. So it's programs that we are trying to get into, but then look how this sprung on us. We were thinking we was going to be able to have time to do things. We don't got no time. They got people already tearing it down. Stop lying. Stop. They tearing it down. They done tore down all the trees. They making that riverfront over there by where I live. It's already in the process. So why don't y'all just give us the things that we need so that we can move on? Write it down in black and white that we can have the right to come back. Because y'all not listening to us when we say we don't want to demolish it. We want to be moved to one side. We already over there. Move us to one side, rebuild that side. Put us over there and rebuild the other side. Whoever is left, because it's under 80 families here. That's 100 units right there. Okay? So thank you guys for everything. My backbone rushing me, because he know I get emotional. But thank you guys for everything, and thank you for your support. Just thank you, and God bless everybody. You don't want to speak, Shayna?
I'm going to hand it back to our MC, but again, for those that have heard the words of the council, are here today, are concerned, right, that this community is being demolished without a clear plan in place, right? What we've been told is the plan's going to come later. Well, that's all backwards. If you're doing this correctly, you hire a master developer, you work with a master developer, you work with the community, you figure out what demolition application you're going to go with, and then you execute an equitable, fair plan, right? We're doing it differently here in Savannah. We're going with the demolition strategy. We'll hire the developer later. We'll figure out what's going to come later, and that's not good enough for the council. It shouldn't be good enough for you as a Savannah resident. And so what you can do, right, is go out there, talk to your friends, talk to your elected officials, and try to get the housing authority to commit to what they've already said, right, but put it in a legally enforceable agreement to ensure that these women have a place here when this community goes from being one of the worst kept communities in terms of conditions to one of the best. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening.